Oh, great to be here. Another good Wisconsin company growing and seeing great growth not only in the last year, but even this past month. Part of the trend we hope to continue here in the state of Wisconsin. I want to have the chance to have 4 more years to help grow, and I think it's a stark contrast between our record of moving the state forward, and I think the record we'd see of Madison School Board member Mary Burke, which I think we made a pretty good case, and between now and November 4th, would be going backwards to giving Jim Doyle's policies a third term. I don't think people want that. We created in our first 3 years just about twice as many jobs as Mary Burke did in her 3 years when she worked for Jim Doyle. I think that's a stark contrast. Add to that the fact the unemployment rate 10 months in a row has gone down, well below the national average, 5.7%. The only time in the last 25 years the unemployment rate's been higher than the national average was for several months when Mary Burke worked for Jim Doyle as the Secretary of Commerce. So we think there's a stark contrast. Certainly today, again, we're making stressing that point again with this latest ad. We think, it's only appropriate. Certainly people look at my record and where it's going to take people going forward. We think it's a positive record to build off of. But we think Mary Burke's time on the Madison School Board, her time working for Jim Doyle as the Secretary of Commerce, and certainly the time that she worked for Trek Bicycle, all those things are fair parts for you in the media, for the public to take a look at. And we particularly think when it comes to one of the examples of many more we'll be talking about in the future, putting up $12.5 million to build to help purchase a piece of land, a parcel of land, for a company that at that time, even back then, made it clear that they did not have an intention to move forward and create jobs on, that is still vacant today, is indicative of, she said that's her campaign's response was that's what they consider to be economic development. 8 years after it happened, it's still vacant. There aren't any plans to move forward on it. Maybe that's why we created nearly twice as many jobs in our first 3 years as they did during their 3 years. If that's their view of economic development.
Governor, did you attend Shelley and Kathy's wedding?
I did not. I was in New York the couple days around that time when they had they didn't have a wedding. They actually just went to the courthouse and signed it, or had their documents signed at that point. But I was in New York with bond underwriters.
Does your family's participation in that ceremony signal a change in your position on gay marriage in the state of Wisconsin?
No, simple as family member, someone we love very much, and I think it speaks for itself.
Did Tonette go to the ceremony?
Everybody in my family was there except me.
Did you support Alex's decision to sign as a witness to the wedding?
In general, he's 18 years old. He's not 19.
Oh,
he's 18. Matthew just turned 20, but he'll be 19 at the end of the month. But he's an adult, so he can do whatever he wants. But I said it's not even a political statement on his part. It's as simple as a matter of he supports his cousin. He's a second cousin, first cousin of my wife today.
You understand why people are making a political connection at this point, though, when your family's so involved?
Oh, I do. Actually, I think the real reason why the connection, or why the focus on this, is because Mary Burke and her allies don't want to talk about her record on jobs, which is a horrible one. If I was them, I wouldn't want to talk about anything else. I think if people look at the difference between my record, first 3 years, versus her record, her 3 years working for Jim Doyle, I would want to talk about anything else but.
But social issues are important in this race too. It's not just about.
No, we talked about this before. I just fundamentally disagree. It's one of those where, regardless of where somebody stands, my position hasn't changed. The reason I pointed out why it's irrelevant is anybody who knows anything about government knows that this is in the state's constitution. There are only 2 ways it can be altered. Neither of them have anything to do with the governor. One is in the courts, where it stands right now. The other would be someday, if the courts didn't take action on it, would ultimately be through a vote of the people, which in no way involves the governor, whether it's me or anybody else in the future. So it is one of those issues where I said it's certainly an interesting issue from the media standpoint, but it has really nothing to do with the governor's race, because whether it's me, Mary Burke, Brett Husley, or anybody else out there, the current or future governor wouldn't have anything to say about it.
What is your position on gay marriage? Could you articulate that?
I said my position hasn't changed. I was one of the majority of people who voted for the definition of marriage in 2006. My position hasn't changed.
Do you know Alex's position on the issue?
All right, guys, anything
Again,
else?
I don't think his position, like you said, is a factor. If he was involved in others, it might be. This is a simple family.
What about one more other. On the issue of selling state property, I know there was something that came up on that late last week. What is your position on possibly putting some of the state property up on the public market?
Well, I put it in the budget, so I support it. What I said is we wanted a thorough review review of that to make sure that that we weren't literally having a fire cell. That anything we looked at, we originally looked at power plants, but we had it wide open. There's several steps. The Department of Administration did a review. They put a series of properties they thought were potentially items that could be sold. It has to go through both the Building Commission and the Joint Finance Committee, so there's several layers to make sure that there's not just a short-term but a long-term implication. And what I want it for is ultimately to help buy down debt, so that we're not using it for a one-time fix, but it's ways of buying down the state's debt. Under Jim Doyle, debt went up dramatically. We've leveled things off since I've become governor. I'd like to chip away at it. This would be one way to do it.
Did you support the decision to bypass the civil service rules and to give the job to promote Cindy Archer to her position?
Didn't have anything to do with it. That's a position that I have absolutely zero authority over.
I just asked, did you support it though?
Didn't even know about it until I read it.
Are you okay
Actually,
with
I read
the
it
decision?
in the Wisconsin State Journal, and then I read it here. To me, it's irrelevant. It's kind of like gay marriage. It is really irrelevant to my position.
So there are a lot of things going on that your opinion doesn't matter on.
My position's irrelevant to whether or not the Packers win the Super Bowl or not, but I have a position that I hope they do. But I don't comment on everything else out there. And it's one of those, again, I think for my opponents, sometimes even you all in the media, there's a lot of things you guys talk about that are irrelevant to my campaign or to what the voters are at.
But you
have every right in a free society to cover whatever you want. I just think most voters want to actually hear from candidates about things that are actually relevant to the position.
Is your new ad putting in a bad light the company that hired 2,000 Wisconsinites?
No, it's putting in poor light Mary Burke. To me, when we make positions and we work with companies all the time, we'd be happy to work with Abbott. But if we were going to work with Abbott going forward, we'd actually want to have some sense that they were actually going to do something to develop a piece of land or to add jobs. That's the fundamental difference here. Mary Burke's administration at that time in the Department of Commerce actually commented in their emails about not putting in place performance measures. Those are things that Mary Burke's allies went after the state over the last few years on. We've actually put those provisions and things through the Wisconsin Economic